Hello and welcome to our first actual video with some content. Today we had decided to make a video slash commentary on what was considered to be by many to be one of the best games of the recent Tata Steel tournament that happened in the Netherlands. Now we got a lot of requests for the game between Anand and Aronian. Anand crushed Aronian with black in a very beautiful game. But unfortunately, it's been a little bit overdone around the internet. A lot of people have already seen this game, and it doesn't have that much practical value for you, the everyday player, simply because Anand won with very deep, very precise, not exactly calculation. He did find a lot of moves over the board, but it was mainly preparation that he did before the game even started. And unless you are the specific player that plays this line of the Maran, it really won't be that useful for you. You're not going to be striking any really kind of tactics that Anand played in the game. However, I believe that the game that we chose, Harikrishna Wely, is of great practical value. I think that Harikrishna showed how to handle a very typical position that you might see in your games very, very often. So without more introduction, let's jump into the game. This was played in the 5th round. These are two of the relatively lower rated players in the tournament. Neither of them are quite 2700, but they are definitely very strong players. Harikrishna has been on a roll, especially last year at the beginning. He won the Tata Steel B tournament, and that's how he qualified for this A group. And he won Capella Grand, a very strong open in France. Wely has been a classical player. He's played many strong events, and he has been playing the A group of the tournament for many years. Although he is a little bit lower rated than he used to be, he has been considered to be very dangerous, and he's beaten pretty much everybody there is in the circuit. Harikrishna starts the game with e4, and we're going to see a little bit, and I'm going to make a couple of annotations on just the beginning of the game. We see a very typical Sicilian with knight f3 and e6, but after d4, pawn takes, knight takes, Wely chose the move a6, and if you want to read a little bit of what I've typed, and Lisa has typed, she'll be, by the way, in charge of the second half of this video. I will be doing more of the opening and transition to the attack phase, and she'll be doing a little bit more of what's fun and what was the end of the game, and a lot of instruction from this video really comes from how Harikrishna finished off Wely, so she'll be handling that. Now for the more technical and boring side, here I am, and I'm going to explain a little bit of the differences between the Sicilian Khan and the Sicilian Taimanov. The Taimanov is considered to be anything that arises really from this position, and you see white playing a lot of English attack, which is knight c3, bishop e3, f3, queen d2, and then launching this pawn forward later. However, you can say that the Khan is designed to avoid this kind of specific development. If white were to, for example, play knight c3, which is a very common move, queen c7, now white has two really major options. You can go bishop e2, you can go bishop d3. The problem with going a very early bishop e3, which is not really played in this position at the top level, is that after bishop b4 and a quick knight f6, d5 is already ready, and because of the very strong pressure on c3, they can't handle really putting the pawn on f3 and castling queenside. It's very risky for white. So you don't see any grandmasters going for this kind of setup against the Khan. However, on the other hand, the move a6 is obviously not as beneficial as knight c6 would be when it comes to fighting the center. So there have been many different ways of fighting the setup. A very common idea nowadays is to put the bishop on d3, and after, for example, a move like queen c7, there are alternatives. There's knight f6, there's other moves. Play a move like c4 and go for a Maroczy bind. This was definitely Kasparov's favorite way of dealing with this position, and it still remains very dangerous. I love the black side of this structure. I've played this many times in my last two tournaments, in both a round robin in Los Angeles and the very strong North American Open in Las Vegas. I was very successful with my results, but I must admit I got a little lucky in a couple of games. The structures are very fun. They're very complex. They're called hedgehog. style, and we'll probably see that in some video later in the future. Well, let's focus back in the game. After a6, Harikrishna played a more calm setup with bishop e2, and after very common developing moves, knight f6, knight c3, d6, castles, bishop e7, a4, preventing b5, knight c6, bishop e3, castles, f4. We've really reached what has been called a tabia, or tabia, I'm not really sure how to pronounce this, which means kind of a starting position in chess. It's one of those positions that's been played so often that's considered to be one of the starting positions of chess. The Ruy Lopez closed is one of the more famous ones, also the King's Indian after e5 and the classical variations considered to be another one. Many Nimzo-Indian lines are considered tabias. What basically this means, it's been played so many times, it's got so many good grandmaster games that the ideas are known. If you play this kind of setups, you must know the grandmaster games that go with it. So if you're playing e4 and you're playing this kind of Scheveningen style positions, you must know this game, Harikrishna and Wely. This is the game to look at right now on how to deal with the black pieces, how to deal with their setup, and how to continue your attack in a timely and good fashion. Queen c7 is considered to be the main line in this position. The queen is very useful on c7. Likewise, the move king h1 is very common. Rook e8 is also the main line. The idea of rook e8 is hard to explain to those uninitiated in the Sicilian, but the rook e8 move allows black a few options. First of all, the break e5 will come with bigger strength if it's ever achieved. Second, it allows the bishop to go back to f8 and maybe even reroute to g7. And in other cases, it allows this knight to go back to f8 and protect this somewhat weakened h7 pawn. And we'll actually see this in this game, this very standard maneuver of holding together the pawn on h7 with the knight on f8. And for that, rook e8 is mandatory. After bishop f3, when Wely plays bishop d7, which actually holds a slight positional threat. If white were to play very similar to the game and go with something like g4, the problem is that in this position, black can immediately swap knights and put the bishop on c6. And this pressure that starts to generate on the diagonal is very, very annoying for white. e5's coming, there are problems with the e4 pawn, you suddenly don't feel too comfortable having played g4. And the whole thing is not very pretty. So most grandmasters at this stage of the game, they see bishop d7 and they're like, oh, I must retreat, and they go after bishop d7, knight b3, which is by far the most common move in the position. It's definitely the correct one. You don't want those knights being swapped when the bishop on d7 can come to c6. Now that being said, a simple look at the game reveals that white has more space, but his structure is a little bit loose. For example, the a4 pawn has created a weakness on b4. The e4 pawn is weak in many variations. The f4 pawn is not really helping out the center as much as it would like to. So once your pawns are a little bit weak, you might as well make them all weak. And the most common way for white to continue in this kind of position is to play the attacking idea g4, g5, kicking out the knight from f6, gaining some space on the king side, and kind of going for an all-out attack. And the term all-out was something that I had always thought was true in this kind of positions, but Harikrishna shows that although the attack is very strong on the king side, it doesn't mean that it's all-out. In this case,